The cream-colored envelope waited on Amelia Torres's doormat like a dare. It was Tuesday, 2:07 p.m., and she'd just come off a 10-hour shift at the Denver bakery, hair dusted with flour, fingers still carrying the scent of vanilla and lemon zest. She slit the envelope open with a paring knife, and there it was. Victoria's wedding invitation. All embossed scrolls and restrained elegance. Amelia read it once, twice, 3 times, as if the meaning might change. Her older sister, the golden child, their mother's flawless reflection, was getting married at a lakeside resort in June. A note in Victoria's graceful cursive added, "It would mean everything to have you there." The same hand that used to return Amelia's sketches with a faint smile and the words, "Pretty, but not quite right." Amelia set the invitation down beside a tray of cooling honey lavender tarts and felt that old familiar ache slide in like a cold draft. Thanksgiving replayed itself in cruel detail. Her 2-day pumpkin cheesecake, silky, spiced perfection, pushed to the corner of the buffet while her mother praised Victoria's store-bought pie. "So classic, so tasteful," she'd said. It was always the same. Victoria arrived, and the world tilted toward her. Amelia arrived, and she filled the silence. She told herself she should be happy. Sisters should be happy, but happiness, she realized, had a texture, and this one felt like sand in her teeth. That night, her phone pinged. A group chat photo from her mother. Champagne flutes, floral arrangements, silver cutlery. "Isn't it elegant?" The caption read. Amelia typed, "Beautiful," but didn't send it. Instead, she opened her recipe notebook, pages freckled with sugar dust, and began a list. Eggs, cream, lemons. When love won't feed you, lemons will. 2 days later, Victoria finally called. "Can you make it?" she asked, brisk and distracted, as though scheduling a hair appointment. "Tell me about Gregory," Amelia said. "He's a regional director at Bennett Health. Very established. Mother adores him." Of course she did. When the call ended, Amelia stood in her tiny kitchen, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator. She pictured the rows of white chairs, the lake, the front row that would never bear her name. Not a question, just a fact, like weather. She packed the tarts for a regular who always tipped in cash and kindness. On the lid, she wrote herself a quiet promise. "I will go. I will bring something beautiful, and whether they see me or not, I will see myself. He wedding of perfection." The morning of the wedding arrived draped in perfection. Thin sunlight spilling over the mountains, soft clouds curling like lace. Amelia Torres's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she drove the winding road toward the lakeside resort. In the back seat, her pale blue dress hung from the hook, a soft whisper of fabric meant to look graceful without stealing attention. On the passenger seat sat her gift, a box wrapped in silver paper, containing a set of handcrafted ceramic bowls from a local artist. Thoughtful, personal, safe. The resort loomed ahead like a fairy tale drawn by someone who'd never lived one. Ivory walls, manicured gardens, a lake so still it reflected the sky like glass. Amelia parked near the lower lot, away from the expensive cars. A black Mercedes gleamed under the morning sun, her mother's. Of course. Always early, always dazzling. She took a deep breath before stepping out. The air smelled of roses and something sharper, money maybe, or ambition disguised as happiness. Inside the main building, guests moved like pieces on a perfectly arranged chessboard, coordinated, smiling, rehearsed. Staff hurried by with clipboards and flower arrangements. Every surface gleamed, every ribbon matched. The kind of event where perfection wasn't an accident. It was policy. Amelia spotted the bridal suite down the hall. Laughter echoed from inside, high-practiced exclusive. She hesitated before knocking. Victoria glanced up from her vanity mirror, eyes flicking to Amelia's reflection. "Oh, Amelia, you're early. I thought I could help with something." Everything in the room paused for a beat. The bridesmaids, 5 of them, all dressed in matching silk robes, exchanged glances. Champagne glasses clinked, mascara wands froze midair. Then Victoria smiled, the same smooth, camera-ready expression she'd been perfecting since adolescence. "That's sweet, but everything's handled. The planner's a miracle worker. A blonde bridesmaid whispered something, and the others laughed softly. Amelia felt heat crawl up her neck. Right, she said quietly. Well, I'll find my seat. As she turned to leave, Victoria's voice floated behind her. Don't wander too far, okay? We start soon. The words were kind, but they landed like dismissal. Outside, staff hurried to arrange the last of the white chairs overlooking the lake. The scene looked like something from a bridal magazine. Floral arches, silk ribbons fluttering in the breeze, a string quartet warming up in the corner. Amelia wandered toward the seating area, scanning for her name. Front row, reserved for family. Second row, Victoria's in-laws. Third, close friends and business partners. And then, there it was. The last row, behind a thick marble pillar that blocked half the view of the altar. Her name, Amelia Torres, printed in delicate gold script, gleamed mockingly from the card. It wasn't an oversight. Victoria never forgot details. This was deliberate. Amelia stood there for a long moment, her fingers curling around the name card. She could leave, drive home, blame it on traffic or work. She imagined herself back in her apartment, barefoot, a glass of wine in hand, watching a storm through her window. Peaceful, safe, invisible. But then she saw herself through Victoria's eyes. Absent, predictable, small. No, not today. She slid the name card into her clutch like evidence and sat down in her assigned seat. Behind the pillar. Behind the perfection. As guests began arriving, laughter floated around her like perfume. Familiar faces passed without recognition. Cousins, uncles, her mother's friends. No one noticed the woman sitting half hidden in the back. Her mother appeared 20 minutes before the ceremony, gliding down the aisle in a champagne-colored gown that shimmered in the light. Heads turned. Compliments followed like confetti. She smiled graciously, soaking it all in, but never once looked back toward the last row. Of course, Amelia murmured to herself. The quartet began to play. Conversations hushed. The procession started. Bridesmaids in sage green, matching bouquets, perfect posture. Then came Victoria on their father's arm. Even from her obscured seat, Amelia could see the glow. The designer gown, the polished smile, the effortless confidence. The same grace that had always come from knowing the world would rearrange itself for her. Amelia swallowed the lump rising in her throat. The ceremony unfolded like a movie she wasn't cast in. Applause followed the vows, then kisses, then cheers. And still, behind the pillar, Amelia sat, half seen, half forgotten, the invisible sister in the perfect family portrait. When the music swelled again, a shadow fell over her shoulder. Someone had sat down beside her. A man's voice murmured softly, "Quite the view from back here, isn't it?" She turned, startled, and met the steady, knowing eyes of a stranger who looked just as out of place as she felt. For the first time all day, Amelia smiled. The man beside Amelia leaned back in his chair, a half-smile tugging at his lips as the applause from the ceremony faded into chatter. He was in his early 30s, tall, with dark hair brushed carelessly to one side, and eyes the color of storm clouds, calm but watchful. His suit fit perfectly, but his expression said he'd rather be anywhere else. "Not exactly the best seats in the house," he murmured. "I had to check twice to make sure I wasn't sitting in the staff section." Amelia gave a small, surprised laugh, the first sound of amusement she'd managed all day. "You too, huh?" "Row 12, seat A," he said, holding up his name card like a confession. "Apparently I'm the overflow guest." "And you?" "Row 12, seat B, the bride's sister." That earned her a sharp, incredulous glance. "You're kidding." "I wish I were." The stranger blinked, his brows lifting slightly. "They put the bride's sister behind a pillar?" "Behind a pillar and next to the emergency exit," she corrected dryly. "It's symbolic, really," he chuckled, the sound low and warm. "Symbolic of what?" "Of being family," Amelia said. "At least in this one." For a moment, they sat in silence as guests began rising from their seats, drifting toward the cocktail pavilion. The wind lifted a few petals from the floral arch, scattering them across the aisle like tiny paper lies. The man stood and extended a hand. "Julian Hart. Amelia Torres," she replied, shaking his hand. "Well, Amelia Torres," he said, straightening his tie. "Since we've both been exiled to the outskirts of perfection, what do you say we form an alliance?" "An alliance?" "Mutual survival. I'll make sure you don't die of boredom. And you make sure I don't say something sarcastic to the bride's family that gets me thrown out." She hesitated, glancing at the clusters of laughing guests ahead, perfect people in perfect groups. Then back at Julian, whose eyes held no judgment, just quiet understanding. "Deal," she said. The cocktail hour was held on the terrace overlooking the lake. Music drifted through the air, mingling with laughter and the clink of glasses. Servers moved like clockwork, balancing trays of appetizers that looked more like art than food. Julian guided her to a corner table under a white canopy. "Strategic position," he said, motioning toward the view. "We're close enough to observe, far enough to stay invisible." "I'm used to invisible," Amelia replied before she could stop herself. He studied her for a moment. "You shouldn't be." The words landed heavier than she expected. She sipped her wine to mask her reaction. "Tell me something," he said after a pause. "Your sister, is she always like this?" "Like what?" He gestured toward the crowd, toward the flawless bride laughing with her entourage. "The center of gravity. Everyone else just orbits around her." Amelia's smile was faint, tinged with sadness. "Always. My mother calls her the sun. I guess that makes me the moon, visible only when she's not around." Julian tilted his head, thoughtful. "Funny thing about the moon, though. It doesn't need to shine all the time to control the tides." That earned him a genuine smile, small but real. As the sun lowered, the reception began inside the grand ballroom. The tables glittered with gold cutlery and cascading flowers. Amelia searched for her name again and found it, this time tucked into a back corner near the service doors. Julian's table was across the room, also at the edge. He picked up his card, frowned, and walked straight toward her. "You know what?" he said, slipping the card into his jacket pocket. "This is ridiculous. They'll survive one small breach of protocol. Julian, relax," he said lightly. "If anyone asks, I'm your +1. You invited me because you couldn't handle all this glamour alone." Before she could protest, he pulled out the chair beside her and sat, heads turned briefly, then lost interest when no scene erupted. "You're impossible," she whispered, though the corner of her mouth twitched upward. "Possibly. But you're smiling now, so you're welcome." The dinner unfolded like a performance. Toasts, speeches, carefully rehearsed laughter. The groom's father praised Victoria's poise and perfection. Her mother spoke of a daughter who always made her proud. Her sister's name was never mentioned, each omission cut a little deeper. Amelia kept her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully composed, until Julian's hand brushed hers under the table. Steady, grounding. She didn't look at him, but she didn't pull away either. When dessert arrived, a towering raspberry chocolate cake, Julian leaned in. "You're judging it already, aren't you?" "As a professional, I can't help it," Amelia said. "It's beautiful but too sweet. The frosting hides the flavor. It's all presentation, no balance. Kind of like this wedding?" That made her laugh quietly, a sound that felt both fragile and freeing. Later, when the music started and couples drifted to the dance floor, Julian stood and offered his hand. "I don't dance," she said automatically. "Good," he replied. "Neither do I. But we'll look convincing enough to make your sister wonder who the mysterious man behind the pillar was." Amelia hesitated, then took his hand. They swayed under the chandelier, surrounded by people who had never really seen her. For the first time in years, she didn't care. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply there, moving, breathing, visible. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" "For seeing me." Julian's voice was soft. "Always." When the night ended, Amelia stood at the edge of the lake, watching the reflection of fireworks ripple across the water. Somewhere behind her, her mother's laughter echoed, sharp and distant. But beside her, Julian's quiet presence filled the silence like warmth. The wedding of perfection was over. And for the first time in her life, Amelia no longer wanted to belong to it. By the time the dinner plates were cleared and the band struck its first soft notes, the ballroom shimmered like a dream built on fragile glass. Every detail screamed perfection. Crystal chandeliers, rose gold table runners, candles burning in symmetrical rows. Amelia Torres sat near the back, pretending not to notice how the family table glowed under the spotlight. Her mother was radiant, her laughter sharp and rehearsed. Her sister Victoria, in her ivory gown, looked like every fairy tale heroine Amelia had ever been told she'd never be. Then Julian leaned closer and whispered, "If I didn't know better, I'd think this entire event was sponsored by insecurity." Amelia stifled a laugh. "Be careful. They might hear you." "Good," he murmured. "Maybe they'll finally learn what authenticity sounds like." His confidence should have irritated her. Instead, it steadied her, pulling her out of the loneliness she'd been drowning in all evening. As the waiter poured champagne, Julian tapped his glass lightly. "You know," he said, "we could make this more interesting." "More interesting than Table 12? She teased. "Impossible. I mean," he said, his eyes glinting, "pretend I'm your date, officially." Amelia blinked. "What?" "Everyone here's staring at the bride and groom anyway. No one's paying attention to us. So let's give them something they don't expect. You. Looking like the one person not trying too hard." Amelia looked at him skeptically, then at the front of the room where Victoria was laughing for the cameras. "Pretend dating my sister's wedding guests? That's your plan?" Julian shrugged. Strategic rebellion. And before she could argue, he reached across the table and brushed a crumb from her hand. Casually, deliberately. "Now they'll assume we're a couple," he said with a grin. Amelia rolled her eyes, but her heart fluttered in a way it hadn't in a long time. "You're impossible. Persistent," he corrected. "There's a difference." As dinner turned into speeches, Amelia found herself watching Julian more than the room. He was effortlessly composed, laughing at the right moments, saying little but meaning everything. When her mother stood to speak, praising Victoria for her grace, drive, and devotion to family, Amelia felt Julian's fingers graze hers under the table. It wasn't flirtation. It was recognition, silent, grounding, like he was saying, "I see you too." When the music swelled again, couples rose to dance. Amelia's instinct was to disappear, to stay seated, invisible, safe. But Julian stood and held out his hand. "No," she said, shaking her head. "Yes," he countered. "It's only dancing." "I don't dance." He leaned closer, his voice a whisper that smelled faintly of wine and something woodsy. "Neither do I. That's why it'll be perfect." Against her better judgment, she let him lead her to the dance floor. The band's rhythm slowed into something tender, strings and piano weaving around the hum of soft laughter. Julian's hand settled at her waist, warm and steady, while her fingers rested lightly on his shoulder. He was right. It wasn't perfect. He misstepped once, she twice, but somehow that made it feel more real than anything else in that glittering room. "You clean up well," Julian murmured. Amelia smiled. "You should see me after a 12-hour shift at the bakery. Flour in my hair, sugar on my shoes. Very glamorous and sounds honest. I like honest." She met his eyes, gray, serious, unreadable. "You don't strike me as someone who needs to play pretend." "Sometimes pretending helps people see what's real. Deep," she teased softly. "Are you always like this?" "Only when I'm trying to impress someone." The answer came so easily she almost missed its weight. They moved in rhythm for another few beats before Amelia spoke. "You know, my mother once said I'd never fit into this world, that I was better off staying behind the counter, baking for people who'd forget my name by dessert." Julian's jaw tightened. "She's wrong." "She's always right," Amelia said with a faint laugh that wasn't funny. "No," he said firmly. "She's loud, not right. There's a difference." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. No one had ever said that to her before. Not her father, not her friends, not even herself. When the song ended, they didn't step apart. Around them, applause rippled as Victoria and Gregory prepared for their first dance. The crowd turned toward the front, but Julian and Amelia lingered near the edge of the floor. "Want to keep pretending?" he asked quietly. "For tonight, maybe," she said. "Tomorrow I'll go back to baking cakes and paying rent. Then tonight, I'll make sure you don't forget what it feels like to be seen." He said it so simply, so sincerely that she didn't know what to do but smile. They left the ballroom for air, slipping through a side door onto the terrace. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, still, unjudging, infinite. Fairy lights hung in the trees, glowing softly. Amelia leaned against the railing, exhaling. "It's beautiful," she said. "It is," Julian agreed. "But it's not the wedding. It's the quiet afterward that's real." She glanced at him. "You sound like someone who's been through a few fake smiles of his own." He chuckled. "Let's just say I know what it's like to disappoint the people who think they own your story." Amelia turned back to the water, her heart heavy and full all at once. "You're a stranger, Julian Hart," she said softly. "But tonight, you make more sense than my own family ever has." He stepped beside her, close but not too close. "Then maybe I'm not a stranger anymore." She met his eyes, and for the first time that evening, she felt something shift. A quiet certainty that what began as an accident might become something far more meaningful. Inside, laughter roared. The perfect family toasted the perfect couple. But outside, beneath the glow of fairy lights, Amelia Torres and Julian Hart shared something neither of them had planned for. Not a lie, not a performance, but a fragile, beautiful truth. For one night, the girl behind the pillar was finally seen. Morning sunlight spilled across the hotel curtains like a slow confession. For a moment, Amelia Torres didn't remember where she was. Then the scent of roses and champagne drifted through the air, and the ache in her chest returned, a souvenir from last night's perfection. The wedding was over. The laughter, the lights, the music, all gone, leaving only silence and a faint glitter of confetti on her shoes. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Text from Victoria. "Thank you for coming last night. It meant a lot to have you there." Amelia stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Did it, she wondered? Did it mean a lot that she sat behind a pillar, unseen, unheard, smiling through speeches that erased her existence? She typed a polite congratulations. It was beautiful, then deleted it. What she wanted to say was, "You didn't even look at me once." Her chest tightened. Before she could decide, another message flashed, this one from an unfamiliar number. Julian Hart. "Good morning, Amelia." "Breakfast?" 9 a.m. in the lobby cafe. "I promise no small talk, only coffee and something dangerously sweet." A smile broke through the heaviness. Maybe the morning wouldn't be entirely wasted. Julian was already waiting when she arrived. Sleeves rolled up, tie gone. A faint shadow on his jaw that made him look less like a wedding guest and more like a man she could actually know. "You look like you survived the storm," he said, standing to greet her. "I did," Amelia replied, sitting down. "Barely. I think I deserve hazard pay." He laughed. "I'll buy you breakfast instead." They ordered waffles and coffee, and for a while they just talked. About small things, real things, the bakery, his work in renewable energy, the absurdity of weddings. It felt easy, natural. When the plates were nearly empty and the conversation softened, Julian leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." He hesitated, studying her like he was afraid of scaring her off. "What if last night didn't have to end at last night?" Amelia blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he smiled, nervous but sincere. "We pretended to be something we're not, a couple, and it worked. But somewhere between the pretending and the truth, I stopped pretending." Her heart stuttered. "Julian," he held up a hand. "No pressure. Just hear me out. I don't do impulsive things like this, but you," he exhaled. "You're different. You don't fake who you are, even when everyone around you is performing. and I can't stop thinking about that. The cafe noise faded to a distant hum. Amelia stared at him, trying to catch up with the rush of words. "You met me at my worst," she said quietly, sitting behind a pillar, trying not to cry during my sister's vows. "Then I met the real you," he said softly. "Not the version you think you have to be." It would have been easier to deflect, to make a joke, to retreat into sarcasm. But something in his tone disarmed her. "What are you saying, Julian?" "I'm saying I'd like to see where this goes. Dinner, coffee, maybe something that doesn't involve champagne fountains and family drama." He smiled gently. "Let's rewrite the story, just ours." Amelia's first instinct was to laugh it off. She'd built her life on caution, on staying small enough not to get hurt. But looking into Julian's steady gray eyes, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Possibility. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know you make the best critiques of bad cake I've ever heard," he said. "I know you laugh even when it hurts, and I know you've been invisible for too long. Let me change that, Amelia." Silence hung between them, fragile and sweet. Finally, she smiled. "Dinner first, then maybe you can earn the sequel." Julian grinned. "I'll take that as a cautious yes." She finished her coffee, feeling lighter than she had in years. Maybe this wasn't a fairy tale. Maybe it was something better. Something real. As they stood to leave, Julian handed her his business card, the edge smudged with syrup. "Just in case you need me for any future fake weddings," Amelia laughed, tucking it into her purse. "Or real ones," he winked. "One step at a time, Torres." That night, back in her apartment, Amelia placed the silver gift box from the wedding on her counter. The ceramic bowls gleamed softly in the light. Handcrafted, imperfect, unique. She thought about Julian's words, about rewriting her story. Maybe that was exactly what she'd do. The girl behind the pillar was done being invisible. And somewhere between heartbreak and hope, Amelia Torres said yes, not just to Julian's unexpected proposal, but to herself. A week after the wedding, the smell of caramelized sugar filled Amelia Torres's bakery kitchen. She was halfway through glazing a batch of lemon tarts when her phone buzzed against the counter. A call from an unfamiliar number. "Hello? Amelia Torres?" A woman's voice, smooth and professional. "This is Patricia Lane, Vice President at Bennett Health Solutions. We met briefly at your sister's wedding." Amelia froze mid-stir. She remembered Patricia, one of Gregory's high-profile colleagues who'd been seated near the head table. "Oh, yes, of course. How can I help you?" "I wanted to reach out personally," Patricia continued. "Your dessert commentary at the wedding caught my attention. You clearly have a strong understanding of flavor balance. We're hosting a corporate event next month and would love to discuss having you design the dessert menu." Amelia nearly dropped the whisk. "You want me to cater?" "Yes, it's a large event and about 200 guests. Formal, high exposure. And of course, you'll be compensated accordingly." For a moment, Amelia couldn't breathe. Her bakery rarely handled more than small private orders. "I'd love to," she managed, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for thinking of me." "Wonderful. I'll have my assistant send over the details this week." Patricia's tone softened. "And Amelia, don't undersell yourself. You're very talented. I look forward to working together." The call ended, leaving Amelia staring at her phone, heart hammering. That evening, she told Julian over dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant downtown. "She actually said, 'I have strong understanding of flavor balance,'" Amelia said, eyes wide with disbelief. "That's corporate speak for you impressed important people by accident." Julian laughed. "I told you your honesty would get noticed. Turns out people respect truth more than perfection." Amelia leaned back, still trying to absorb it. "Do you think Victoria knows?" "I'm sure she will soon," he said with a sly smile. "And for the record, Patricia didn't just notice your desserts. She noticed your confidence. You were authentic in a room full of pretenders." Amelia toyed with her fork. "That wasn't confidence. That was exhaustion. I was too tired to fake anything that night." "Exactly," Julian said, his tone gentle but firm. "You stopped trying to fit into their version of success. And that's when you became magnetic." She studied him for a moment, then smiled softly. "You always know what to say, don't you? only when it's true. Over the next few weeks, Amelia poured every ounce of herself into preparing for the Bennett Health event. Her kitchen became a symphony of flavors: dark chocolate ganache, honey lavender macarons, caramel-dusted panna cotta. She worked through dawn and dusk, driven by something she hadn't felt in years: pride. Word spread fast. Her small bakery, once overlooked, suddenly had new customers, executives, event planners, even a food critic who'd heard rumors of her corporate debut. One afternoon, as she boxed a custom order, her mother's number flashed on her phone. She hesitated, then answered. "Amelia?" her mother said briskly. "I hear you're baking for Bennett Health next month." News travels fast. "Well, I just hope you don't embarrass your sister or Gregory. This is a very prestigious event." Amelia smiled faintly. "Don't worry, Mom. I've been baking my whole life. I think I can handle it." There was a pause. "I suppose—" "That's good," her mother said finally, her tone uncertain. "It's nice that your little hobby is doing well." "It's not a hobby," Amelia replied quietly. "It's my career." Before her mother could respond, she ended the call. Not in anger, but in peace. That night, Julian stopped by the bakery with coffee and his signature smirk. "So, Chef Torres," he said, "you realize this is how it starts, right? One corporate event, then another, then world domination." Amelia laughed. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." He leaned in, his voice low. "You're already ahead, Amelia. You just finally looked up long enough to see it. For the first time in years," she believed him. The girl who once sat behind a pillar was now standing center stage. Not because someone handed her a spotlight, but because she built her own, and this time, no one could take it away. The Bennett Health event was still 2 weeks away when Amelia's phone buzzed again, this time with a name she hadn't seen in months: Victoria. For several seconds, Amelia just stared at the screen. Then with a slow breath, she answered. "Hi, Victoria." "Amelia, I'm so glad you picked up," her sister said, voice bright but brittle. "Listen, I just realized it's been forever since we've caught up. We should do lunch this weekend. My treat. It was too cheerful, too practiced." Amelia could almost hear their mother's influence in the script. "Lunch?" Amelia asked, keeping her tone neutral. "Sure, Saturday works." "Perfect," Victoria said quickly. "There's a new bistro downtown. You'll love it. Very elegant, nun? See you then?" Amelia hung up and stared at her reflection in the bakery window. She could already sense the performance coming, the faux concern, the subtle condescension. But this time, she wasn't walking in as the forgotten sister. She was walking in as the woman who'd built something of her own. Saturday came clear and golden. Amelia arrived at the bistro 10 minutes early, in a navy wrap dress that made her feel grounded rather than showy. Victoria arrived late, of course, every hair in place, wearing a pale pink suit that screamed effortless wealth. "Amelia," she greeted, air-kissing her cheeks. "You look lovely. How's the little bakery?" The little bakery. The words landed like a reflexive slap. "It's doing well," Amelia said evenly. "Actually, Patricia Lane from Bennett Health hired me for their sustainability gala next week." Victoria's smile froze for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "Oh, how wonderful. Gregory mentioned Patricia admired your desserts at the wedding. You're catering the event?" "I am. Full dessert spread for 200 guests. That's ambitious," Victoria said, swirling her mimosa. "Just be careful not to overextend. Corporate clients can be demanding." "I can handle it," Amelia replied, a quiet edge in her voice. Victoria leaned forward. "I wanted to talk to you about that, actually. I know Patricia. She's been working closely with Gregory's team. It might be better optics if you presented the bakery as a family collaboration. You know, part of the Bennett circle. It reflects well on Gregory and me, and of course it could help you long term." Amelia blinked, stunned. "Better optics?" "Don't take it the wrong way," Victoria said quickly. "It's just, well, when people hear Torres, they'll connect it to Gregory now. It's natural to position it as a family success story. Everyone wins." Amelia sat back, heartbeat rising. There it was again. The pattern she thought she'd left behind. Her work, her name, her worth, rebranded for someone else's benefit. "Let me get this straight," she said, her tone icy calm. "You want to take partial credit for my business?" "Not credit," Victoria insisted. "Just presentation. It's about alignment. You wouldn't even have this opportunity if it weren't for—" She stopped herself, but the damage was done. "If it weren't for Gregory," Amelia finished for her. "Right. Not for the years I spent building the bakery or the skill that made Patricia notice me. It's because of your husband." Victoria's lips parted in surprise at the sharpness of Amelia's tone. "Amelia, that's not what I meant." "Yes, it is," Amelia said, voice steady now. "It's exactly what you meant. It's what Mom always meant. Every time I achieved something, it was cute. Every success, lucky. You never saw me as capable, just convenient." People at nearby tables glanced their way, sensing the temperature drop between the sisters. Victoria's polished composure wavered. "Why are you being so defensive? I was just offering advice." "No," Amelia said softly. "You were offering control. The same kind you and Mom have always tried to have." She pushed her plate aside. "I used to think if I worked harder, stayed smaller, maybe I'd finally earn your approval. But now I see it. You never wanted me to succeed. You wanted me to stay useful." Victoria's eyes hardened. "You're being ridiculous, am I?" Amelia leaned forward. "Tell me, did you mention me to Patricia before she called? Did you even tell her you had a sister who's a pastry chef?" Victoria's silence said everything. Amelia nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." For the first time, Victoria looked unsettled. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. You don't understand how this world works." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Amelia said, standing. "In your world, power is borrowed, image is everything, and people like me are background decoration. But I'm done playing that part." "Amelia, sit down," Victoria hissed. "You're making a scene." "No," Amelia said, voice quiet but resolute. "I'm making a boundary." She placed a few bills on the table and met her sister's eyes. "I'm proud of what I built, and I don't need to attach it to your name to make it valuable." Then she turned and walked out, sunlight spilling over her shoulders as the door swung shut behind her. Outside, the autumn air hit her face like freedom. She stood for a moment on the sidewalk, shaking but unbroken. For the first time in her life, Amelia hadn't swallowed her anger. She'd spoken it. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Julian. "Julian, how'd lunch go? Do I need to send emotional backup in the form of croissants?" Amelia smiled despite herself and typed back, "No need. I handled it. Actually, I think I finally handled everything." "Julian, that's my girl. Patricia just called, by the way. She's expanding your role for the event. Said she's never seen desserts so professionally conceptualized. They're putting your name on the official program." Amelia froze. Her name. Not as Gregory's sister-in-law, not the baker from Denver, just Amelia Torres. For the first time, that name felt powerful. That night, standing in her bakery after hours, Amelia placed the finishing touches on a test batch of gold-dusted macarons. Each one shimmered under the lights, fragile, perfect, and hers. She thought about her mother's scolding tone, Victoria's practiced smile, all the years she'd spent waiting for permission to shine. She didn't need it anymore. Amelia didn't need a family that only loved her when she was useful. She didn't need their approval to validate her success. She just needed this, her craft, her peace, her voice. And as the ovens hummed softly behind her, Amelia whispered the words she'd once been too afraid to say aloud. "I don't owe them anything." For the first time, she meant it. The night of the Bennett Health corporate gala arrived like a storm dressed in diamonds. Downtown Denver shimmered under city lights as luxury cars lined the street outside the glass and steel event hall. Inside, every table gleamed with crystal, silver, and soft gold. And in the center of it all, beneath a canopy of twinkling lights, stood Amelia Torres's dessert display. It wasn't just a buffet. It was a statement. Rows of honey lavender macarons, chocolate raspberry tarts flecked with edible gold, and miniature lemon panna cottas sat like jewelry on mirrored trays. The air carried the scent of vanilla and courage. Julian stood beside her, straightening his tie as the first guests arrived. "You've outdone yourself," he murmured. "This isn't just dessert, Amelia. It's art," she smiled nervously. "If it all collapses halfway through, just promise you'll say something heroic over the wreckage." Julian grinned. Deal. The evening unfolded with precision. Executives mingled, cameras flashed, and servers circled with champagne. Amelia stayed near her display, answering compliments, shaking hands, explaining her flavor concepts like a professional who finally belonged in the room. Then she saw them. Victoria and Gregory, her sister and brother-in-law, entering arm in arm. Her mother followed a few steps behind, radiant in gold, the queen of appearances. Amelia felt her stomach twist, but Julian's quiet voice steadied her. "Remember," he said, "you earned this. They're just guests tonight." He was right. For once, she was the center of gravity. Patricia Lane, the vice president who'd hired her, took the stage as the crowd settled. Her voice carried warmth and authority. "Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we celebrate a successful transition toward a sustainable future at Bennett Health, and we celebrate the people who made it possible. But before we move to speeches and awards, I'd like to recognize someone who made this evening extraordinary in her own way." Amelia froze. Patricia smiled and gestured toward her. "Our desserts tonight were created by a local artisan whose work reminds us that creativity and dedication are the true heart of innovation. Please join me in thanking Amelia Torres, founder of Maison Torres Bakery." Applause erupted. Real, thunderous applause. Amelia blinked, startled by the sound, by the sight of people turning toward her, smiling, clapping, holding up glasses in toast. For once, she wasn't invisible. She wasn't the girl behind the pillar. She was the woman at the center of the room. Julian nudged her gently. "Go on," he whispered. She stepped forward, cheeks flushed, voice trembling but clear. "Thank you, Patricia. It's been an honor to contribute tonight. I believe that creativity, like sustainability, starts with respect. Respect for craft, for people, and for the small details that make something lasting. It wasn't rehearsed, but it was honest." The applause returned, stronger this time. From the crowd, Amelia caught Victoria's expression, tight, brittle, calculating, and her mother's frozen smile, the kind worn by people realizing the hierarchy had shifted. Gregory clapped politely, but Julian's hand found hers, grounding her in that moment. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she said softly. "I finally stopped waiting for someone else to let me." Later that night, as the speeches ended and music filled the air, Amelia stood near the dessert table, surrounded by well-wishers. Patricia approached with a glass of champagne. "You've made quite the impression, Amelia," she said. "We'd like to partner with you for all our corporate events moving forward, and I'd like to recommend you to our affiliates. Expect a few phone calls next week." Amelia blinked, stunned. "That's incredible. Thank you." "You earned it," Patricia said simply, raising her glass. "And something tells me this is just the beginning." When Patricia walked away, Julian slipped an arm around Amelia's waist. "So, world domination through dessert, and how does it feel?" Amelia laughed quietly, looking out across the ballroom where her sister now lingered on the edge of the crowd, forced to watch her shine. "It feels," she said, "like freedom with frosting." Julian kissed her temple. "Told you, the view's better when you're not behind the pillar." Amelia smiled, eyes soft. "And this time, I'm never sitting there again." By midnight, the hall had emptied. Only the faint hum of cleaners and the scent of sugar remained. Amelia gathered her things, slipping her business cards back into her bag. One caught her eye, the one Victoria had dropped on the floor earlier, after awkwardly congratulating her. She turned it over, smiled faintly, and left it behind. She didn't need to chase recognition anymore. She'd earned something better: respect, independence, herself. Outside, the city lights reflected on the glass walls, and in that glittering glow, Amelia Torres, once the forgotten sister, finally stood in her own spotlight. The following week, the echoes of the gala rippled through Denver's corporate circles like perfume in the air. Articles appeared online. "Local artisan redefines dessert design." Bennett Health celebrates sustainability with sweet success. Every headline mentioned Amelia Torres by name. At the bakery, the phone rang nonstop. Catering requests, partnership offers, even an invitation to teach a masterclass at a culinary institute. Her small shop, once a quiet corner of the city, had become the talk of the town. But not everyone was celebrating. On Thursday evening, Victoria showed up unannounced. The bell above the bakery door jingled, and there she was, flawless as ever, but her confidence had cracks. "Amelia," she said, forcing a smile. "You're busy these days." "I am," Amelia replied, folding a pastry box closed. "What brings you here?" Victoria hesitated, eyes flicking to the gold leaf macarons in the display case. "You've made quite a name for yourself. Everyone's talking about the event. Gregory's colleagues were impressed." "I'm glad," Amelia said evenly. "Patricia was wonderful to work with." Victoria swallowed hard. "I may have underestimated you." There it was. Not quite an apology, but the closest she would ever come. Amelia studied her sister for a moment. The same woman who once seated her behind a pillar now stood small amid the scent of vanilla and lemon zest. "Victoria," she said gently, "you didn't underestimate me. You ignored me. There's a difference." Her sister's composure wavered. "You don't have to rub it in." "I'm not," Amelia said. "I just finally understand that your approval isn't my prize. It's your limitation." For once, Victoria had no comeback. She turned toward the door, shoulders tight. "I'll see you at Mom's birthday," she muttered. "Maybe," Amelia said softly. When the door closed, Amelia exhaled and leaned against the counter. The hum of the ovens filled the silence, steady, warm, certain. Poetic justice had never been so quiet. Her family's hierarchy had collapsed not through cruelty, but through clarity. They had built their world on appearances, and she dismantled it with authenticity. For the first time, Amelia didn't need revenge. She had reality, and that was sweeter than anything she could ever bake. 2 months after the Bennett Health Gala, the bakery smelled of new beginnings. The bell chimed constantly now, customers laughing, cameras snapping photos of her displays, local newspapers dropping by for interviews. Amelia Torres's name had become synonymous with elegance and authenticity. But success hadn't changed her. If anything, it had anchored her. Every morning she still tied her apron, rolled dough by hand, and watched sunlight pour through the same front windows that once reflected her loneliness. Only now, that light felt different, warmer, fuller, alive. One afternoon, as she arranged a tray of pistachio eclairs, Julian walked in with 2 coffees and a grin. "Chef Torres, your empire expands. Patricia just called me. Bennett Health's board wants you to design the dessert menu for their holiday fundraiser." Amelia smiled. "Another event already?" Apparently they can't stop talking about the woman who turned dessert into emotion. She laughed softly. "That's ridiculous." He leaned against the counter, eyes gentle. "It's true. You didn't just bake for them, Amelia. You reminded people that passion matters more than performance." She looked at him, this man who had walked into her life when she was invisible, who'd seen her not as a supporting role, but as a story worth telling. "You know," she said, "for years I thought my problem was ambition. I thought I wanted too much. Turns out I was just asking for respect." Julian's smile softened. "And now you have both." Later that evening, after closing, Amelia sat alone in the bakery's quiet glow. She opened a folder filled with new catering requests, luxury hotels, corporate retreats, even a magazine feature. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized something profound. She wasn't chasing validation anymore. She was choosing purpose. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from her mother. "Mom, your father and I are proud of you. I didn't say it enough before. I see now how hard you've worked." Amelia stared at the screen for a long moment. She didn't cry. She didn't feel bitterness. Only peace. Some apologies arrived too late to rebuild what was broken, but right on time to release what was left behind. She typed back, "Thank you. I'm doing well. I hope you are too. That was enough. The next morning, she and Julian stood outside the bakery as the sun rose. Golden light washing over the street, the smell of fresh bread drifting into the air. He slipped his arm around her. If you could tell that girl behind the pillar one thing, what would you say? Amelia smiled softly. I'd tell her that invisibility isn't destiny. It's a pause before awakening. That one day, the silence she endured will become the strength she stands on. Julian kissed her temple. Beautiful answer. She looked up at the sign above the door, Maison Torres Bakery, and felt the words settle deep in her chest. Her name, her story, her legacy. She turned to him and whispered, "You know what the sweetest thing is?" He grinned. "Chocolate ganache." She shook her head. "Freedom. Message to the listener. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is stop waiting for permission. Permission to succeed, to be respected, to be seen." Amelia's story isn't about revenge or rivalry. It's about reclamation, about learning that peace begins the moment you stop shrinking to fit the space others give you. Family, love, and acceptance mean nothing if they require you to disappear. The world won't hand you a spotlight, but if you build one with your own hands, no one can dim it. So if you've ever been the quiet one in the back, the one behind the pillar, the one overlooked, remember this: you were never invisible. You were just getting ready to be seen, and like Amelia Torres, when your moment comes, stand tall. Speak softly.